Somewhere right now, a first officer is deciding whether to request to fly with you, or to specifically request not to. You probably have no idea which one it is. That's not unusual. Most captains don't. First officers talk to each other before pairings, before a command course. Candidates do their research. They find out who's good to fly with, who's fair, who's going to make the trip harder than it needs to be. Sometimes it gets written down. I came across the list once. Just names, no explanation, no context. You either knew why a particular name was on there, or you were new enough that you were about to find out. First thing I noticed was familiar. Instructors and examiners who've been on lists like this for years. Most of them, honestly, don't deserve to be there. They ended up on it because they happened to be in the back of the simulator on someone's worst day. Reputation by proximity, largely unavoidable. It was the second thing I noticed that stopped me. The sheer number of names I didn't recognize. Brand new captains, recently upgraded, some of them only months into the role. Those people hadn't had time to build a reputation for being difficult. They had time to do one thing: discover they now had authority.
And you will respect my authority!
Some of them had apparently made that everyone else's problem. This video is about that. About the reputation you're building on every flight, whether you intend to or not. But first, the room where it all starts. The briefing room. Wherever it happens, however it starts, your crew is forming an opinion of you before you said a single professional word. First impressions in aviation are remarkably difficult to reverse. Walk into that room distracted, disengaged, going through the motions, and you have just told your crew something about yourself that will take the rest of the trip to undo, possibly longer. The pilot who spends the first 5 minutes staring at their phone, mutters through the required items on autopilot, and closes with, "Standard trip. Any questions?" Before anyone has had time to think of one, has made their position clear. They're here to fly the aircraft. The rest of it is someone else's problem. And make no mistake, the lack of professionalism in that room can come from either seat, and it does. Here's one of the genuine privileges of being the captain. You get to set the tone before anyone else has had the chance to. The captains who have mastered the art of the first impression walk in and immediately make the room feel different. Not louder, not more performative, just present, engaged, actually interested in who they're about to spend the next 12 hours with. I've flown with people who were visibly, genuinely happy at 3 o'clock in the morning, not faking it, actually content to be there. That enthusiasm is contagious in a way that's almost impossible to manufacture. Right, back to the list. The patterns, when I looked at who was on it, were clear enough. The first, the high standards instructor with a bedside manner problem. Technically right about almost everything. The feedback itself is often genuinely valuable, but the delivery is so jarring. It's the delivery that people remember. The lesson gets lost. What stays is the feeling of having been on the receiving end of it. They've never once received the message that this is the problem. Nobody told them. They continue, technically excellent, entirely blissfully unaware. Second, the bad day coincidence. On the list because they were there when something went wrong, not because they caused it. Unfair and largely unavoidable. The third, the new captain, whose authority went to their head. From the inside, the early days of command feel like finally being taken seriously. Finally, the brief goes the way you want. Finally, someone has to listen. And some new captains, not all, but enough, let that go somewhere it really shouldn't. The brief becomes a lecture. The flight deck becomes a classroom nobody enrolled in. The first officer stops trying. There is a captain who needs everyone in the vicinity to know that they are, in fact, the captain. It looks, from the outside, like insecurity in a uniform, which, if we're being honest, is exactly what it is. Fourth, the one who makes it harder than it needs to be. Aviation is not that complicated. Aircraft is serviceable, the procedures are established, the flight plan is filed for us. The job on most days is to execute a well-rehearsed sequence of actions and land the thing where it's supposed to go. But there exists a captain who is constitutionally incapable of allowing this to be true. Every flight becomes an expedition. Every decision requires a committee. The fuel calculation takes 40 minutes. The approach briefing covers contingencies for events with a 1 in several million probability of occurring. First officer, who came to work expecting a normal day, is now somehow involved in an epic undertaking that this captain will one day describe to his grandchildren. The through line across all four: an absence of honest feedback at the right moment. These people were never told, so nothing changed. Your airline feels enormous. Till you start getting a reputation, then it feels very small indeed. Let me tell you about a type of captain that doesn't necessarily make it onto the list because from the outside, it looks like conscientiousness. The first officer's sector. The captain has gracefully and mercifully bestowed upon them the honor of flying the aircraft. Except what follows doesn't quite look like a handover. Do you want the gear? Said, while already reaching for it. Selecting and displaying the electronic checklist because it's the next item in the SOP and the captain is ready for it. And isn't it obvious that we should be doing it now? A not too subtle hint, delivered without a word. Every call anticipated, every action preempted. First officer technically flying the aircraft finds that every time they go to do something, it's already done. Not because they were slow, because the captain couldn't help himself. What happens next is predictable. First officer stops trying. They hand back control. Not formally, but effectively. Become passengers, and the captain, having apparently got what they wanted, is now flying both legs. There is a difference between supervising a first officer and flying the aircraft through them. One of those develops your crew, the other doesn't. And only one of them ends up on the list. Related, and this one is less obvious, is the captain who overprotects, takes every leg above 15 knots of crosswind, every approach in marginally challenging weather, every sector with anything technically demanding. The first officer gets the benign days, the clear weather, the simple routes. This feels like conscientiousness. It might even be framed as looking after them. But that first officer will upgrade to command. Their license will permit them to operate up to the certified crosswind limit, say 40 knots, and what they'll have in practice is virtually no experience above 10. The captain who overprotects manufactures the next generation of underprepared commanders. One question, worth asking yourself honestly on a regular basis. Am I making this call because it's genuinely the right decision for safety, or because it manages my own anxiety at the expense of my first officer's development? The honest answer to the second is more often yes than most captains would like to admit. The post-flight debrief. Not the formal kind, just a conversation at the gate. What could we have done better? Pilots are proud creatures. Asking that question, genuinely asking it, not as a formality, requires a particular kind of confidence. Because you're opening a door that might lead somewhere uncomfortable. Your first officer might have something to say about a call you made. They might be right. Most captains never open the door. Some are too proud, some are genuinely too insecure, and some simply don't think to ask, which is perhaps the most avoidable reason of all. Here's the thing about that question, though. What could we have done better is an entirely different proposition to anything we should have done differently. One is a genuine invitation. The other is pointed at no before anyone's opened their mouth. And the first officer who's been flying with a captain who ran an open flight deck, who made them feel like a participant from the briefing room onwards, that first officer will have something to say. Not always, but often enough to matter. Works in the other direction too. If a first officer asks you for feedback, and some of the better ones will, give them something real. Not a performance review, a genuine observation delivered in a way they can actually use. Framing matters here enormously. The same feedback delivered two different ways can either open someone up or shut them down entirely. The captain who understands this is leaving every first officer slightly better prepared for the job than they were before the flight, which is, if you think about it, exactly what the role requires. Here's the thing about reputation that most people miss. It isn't formed in the dramatic moments. It isn't the crosswind landing or the difficult passenger or even an engine failure. Those moments are too visible. Everyone's watching. Everyone's on their best behavior. Reputation is formed in the small ones. Whether you debriefed or said nothing, got off the aircraft and went home. Whether you acknowledged when you made the error or quietly moved on. Whether the first flight of a pairing left the first officer thinking I'd genuinely like to fly with that person again, or quietly hoping they wouldn't have to. The people on that list didn't end up there because of one bad day. They ended up there because of 100 small moments, none of which felt significant at the time. And the uncomfortable truth is that almost none of them know that they're on it. Not because they're bad pilots, because nobody told them. Which means the only honest way to know where you stand is to ask yourself, after every flight, whether that first officer would want to fly with you again. If the answer is yes, and you mean it, you're doing it right. If you're not sure, that's worth paying attention to. And if the question has never occurred to you at all, well, that's probably where the list starts. Okay, in the next episode, decision-making under command pressure. What it actually feels like to make a significant call in real time. Why the simulator can't fully prepare you for it, and why the stakes of command are genuinely different from anything you experienced in the right seat. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if this was useful, you know what to do. See you in the next one.